Hello friends, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce you with Professor P.K. Chaube from Indian Institute of Public Administration. Uh, mm, uh, Professor P.K. Chaube is an eminent economist and analyst of economic events in the country. He will be today discussing with you about the basic concepts of public economics and domain of public economics in fact, and particularly he will be focusing on the rationale of public intervention, the welfare foundation of public policy and public choice mechanism, etc. So I would request Professor P.K. Chaube to please talk to the students about the basic concepts of public economics.
Hello friends, this is a very basic lecture on public economics. It will broadly tell you about the contours. I hope you might have already gone through some of the material which IGNOU has already published, and you might have noticed some of the things, but then I think it is proper that you are introduced to the very basics of public economics, which means what public economics is and what we are supposed to read in public economics. As has been suggested, I shall be talking about the meaning of public economics, also the intervention, the meaning of intervention, what is the domain, what are the forms through which intervention is made, what are the bodies, and some of the ideas about the modes. And also, what is the rationale that we intervene in a market economy, and also something about the allocation and distribution of the resources and public utilities, what are the rationale, and a little about the public choice, what are the forms of democracy, what are the basic areas, and what are the things which we talk in the field of public choice. Now coming to the meaning of public economics, which means economics which deals with the public intervention in the economy, which means we are presuming that an economy that exists in which we intervene is basically a market economy where private property exists and the market exists, and it is because of the private property that the exchanges take place between the persons. But sometimes it is just possible that we are not producing enough, or we are overproducing some of the things which society might not have wanted, but the sum total of the individual's requirement may fall less, or may fall short of the requirement of the society as a whole. So what is the rationale, and what are the manners and approaches and forms and mechanisms, processes and instruments? So some of the things I will be talking in today's lecture. Now when I talk of domain of intervention, which means there are subgroups within public economics which we normally touch upon. Public finance is a broad area, substantial area of public economics, in which we talk of public revenue, that how revenue is raised, whether through taxation or through the property that the government owns in the form of dividends, interest and so on, and also public expenditure where the government spends and what kind of schemes, programs and so on, and also if there is a need for having public debt and how public debt has to be serviced. At the same time, there, as I suggested, that there is something like non-tax revenue. So where from we get it? Naturally, there have to be some ownership of the government. So there are public enterprises, there are firms which produce services and goods, and whereby they can also earn non-tax revenue. But more importantly, how the production is made and how the pricing is done. So output pricing combination, that is the basic domain. You might have noticed that often when you pay electricity bill, you might have noted that it is not one single thing which you are being charged for. There is something constant, something like rental. Then there is something like per unit charge. So the costing is important part in the public enterprises or firms. They do not entirely follow the business principles which the private sector firms usually follow. But at the same time, they are the business concern, so they cannot altogether be divorced from the business principles. Then there are public projects, flyovers, dams, and roads, and many other things which we build up. They are known as public projects. So what is the cash flow, what is the discounted cash flow? That is the domain when one talks of public projects. And then there are also public works and public utilities. For example, electricity and water supplies are supposed to be the basic public utilities which the government is normally catering. But even if they are in the private domain, then they are being regulated by the government intervention. Then there are public services, hospitals, schools, colleges, and at the same time immunization, health services. So there are so many things which come under the area of public services. But how all these are done? What is the mechanism we make a choice whether to go for this kind of public service and at what level of public service? So that area, I mean the decision making mechanism is known as public choice, which means how we are choosing to go for a project or to form an say a firm to produce certain goods, maybe private, maybe public, and of public nature. So they may be concerned with any level of government. When I talk of government, it may be a municipality, it may be a village panchayat, it may be a state government, and it may be the central government or the union government. Of course, there are different varieties of state mechanisms in the world. Some are unitary states and some are federal. Our country is a federal one where we have three levels of the government. Now one question arises, are we supposed to talk of all macroeconomic intervention? Definitely public finance is a macroeconomic intervention, but then there is a monetary policy, there is central banking, and they also intervene in the market. You might have noticed that sometimes they talk of repo rate and reverse repo rate and the CRR and SLR and so on. They are all macro interventions, but in the area of public finance, because otherwise it will become too large. So within the area of public economics, normally we avoid talking of monetary instruments, but at the same time we must notice that they are within the public economics domain, but normally they are not taken as part of when one talks of a single paper or one area. Now you might have wondered, I have been using word intervention time and again, and the word public. What is the meaning of public? Public may mean so many things, but in this particular topic which you are being introduced to, public should mean government, maybe central government, state government, or any level of government at district board level or panchayat level. And then public bodies, which means there may be say boards and associations and corporations and authorities and so on. If they are within the domain of the government, if the government has formed them, if the government is funding them, they are part of the intervention instruments. And also people, when we talk of public choice, then how people are making the choice, how they are electing the people, how they are choosing the issues, and how they are deciding about how to go about it. But any collectivity will not make it public. Like NGO. NGO is a collectivity, family is a collectivity, but they are not within the domain of public in this kind of discourse. Now what do we mean by intervention? Often people use word interference and much of the literature is using word interference in place of intervention. But you might wish to know the difference between intervention and interference. Intervention is something which you welcome. You often ask people when there is a quarrel to intervene in the matter so that issue is resolved. But when you say please don't interfere, which means this is the kind of intervention you do not love. So this is the basic difference between intervention and interference. But there may be a situation where one party thinks that it is intervention, the other party thinks that it is interference. For example, we talk of labor laws, flexibility or rigidity. Trade unions often, what trade unions call as intervention, the private sector firms often call it interference. But nevertheless, the public intervention, we are specifically concentrating only on economic sphere. There may be a lot of social sphere where the government or the public bodies are intervening, but our interest here will be only within the economic sphere and in a system where private property exists and market mechanism works. So this is very important for us, I want to note, to understand the difference between intervention and interference, and at the same time circumscribe our area within the economic sphere. So now you might have noticed that how the government is intervening or how the people are actually intervening. The first part you might have noticed, every time people are talking of policy making. Now this policy making results in various forms. One is acts. We have some, say, Industrial Dispute Act. It is part of the intervention. Or there are so many acts. When we form a corporation, normally we do it through an act. So the parliament or the state assemblies can bring bills and enact them in the form of acts, and that is the basic intervention. How the licenses will be made, how the capacity will be allowed, and so on. And at the same time, sometimes we find that policy making may not always result in terms of acts. For example, industrial policy resolutions, whether 1948 or 1956 or later on, they are the resolutions, which means our representatives in the parliament resolve to act upon, to pursue a particular line, and they are a kind of intervention. And naturally, where we decide whether we should permit the foreign capital or we shouldn't permit foreign capital, whether certain products should be reserved for a small scale industry or they should not be reserved. And over time we keep changing our views, and they are normally done through the resolutions, but often governments have a tendency of late to issue statements rather than resolve. So this is a slight different position, but nevertheless health policy or education policy, they are either resolutions or statements. But often government also issues certain rules, regulations and guidelines. Suppose there is a scheme like integrated rural development program. Now there are certain guidelines given to the functionaries who shall be carrying out these schemes, and likewise there may be all acts are normally followed by rules, and in addition government departments often also make certain regulations also. Now it is often understood that our ministries and departments are actually the bodies of intervention, and they are, no doubt, they are the final authorities which pass on what has to be done and so on. They are part of the executive, but often they will find that the departmental intervention, besides the departmental intervention, there has to be certain other level. So they might be forming boards like export promotion board, or it is just possible that you have a foreign investment promotion board, and there can be bureaus like labor bureau, there can be institutions, now we call it suppose Bureau of Standards, but earlier we used to call it Indian Standards Institution. Then there are corporations, a lot many corporations, whether railways of course run as a board, but then most of the say manufacturing units are run as corporations. But besides that we also have trade corporations, like MMTC or STC, and we also have, say, Food Corporation of India, we also have Life Insurance Corporation of India, and so on. So they are the form of corporation. Corporation basically means that, particularly in the context of India, that they are formed under an act. An act is passed whereby corporations are formed. But the government bodies can also have a shape of companies, meaning thereby they can be registered under Companies Act. And in some of the states, particularly in Tamil Nadu, they have a fashion of having companies, though the nomenclature is often corporation. So they are under a different section, and whereby the government owns a large share, and sometimes they permit the private participation as well. But then there are so many committees, parliamentary committees, and task forces, and so on. But then there are councils. So all kind of councils which are functioning under the ministries, like Dental Council, maybe All India Council of Technical Education, maybe Export Council or Apparel Council. There are so many. Then many a time we also encounter authorities, like Noida is an authority, Greater Noida is another authority, DDA is another authority, Delhi Development Authority. So you can have Huda, or you can have Puda, Haryana Urban Development Authority, or Punjab Urban Development Authorities, and so on. And they are all form of interventions. At the same time, there may be some cases where the people are not happy and they can go for appeals. And there may be some tribunals also for adjudication, particularly when there is a matter of concern between the labor and the industry. We often go for tribunals. So these are the forms or other bodies through which the government intervenes. Now you can also note that there are different modes of intervention. Either the government itself produces, for example, defense is the total production, but BHEL is also a production. And likewise, there may be, once upon a time we had even bakery production, but there are so many manufacturing firms, they go for production. But then the other is which we call promotion. These bodies are not supposed to produce anything or earn profit. They are supposed to go for general promotion of a particular domain, maybe export, maybe investment, maybe what you call social welfare. And then there is a case where we talk of provision, meaning thereby the procurement may be done by some agency and the provision is made by say the government. So provision, and in other context also we can talk of provision like health, like education. So these are the ways the services are provided, and sometimes they may not be entirely produced by the public sector, within public sector, but they have to be provided, or they are provided by the government. For example, much of defense production may be done in the private sector, but then the defense is the provisioning that has to be made by the government. So they implement various schemes, programs, and projects. They also adjudicate when there is a matter of conflict, and often they have to regulate. Like you know that for insurance they have a regulatory body, for telecom they have another regulatory bodies. So they are normally known as authorities, but their job basically is regulation. So how the spectrum has to be distributed among the players, and which kind of charge has to be made, or say electricity, so there is a regulatory body and they will be deciding what should be the wheeling charges and so on. So this is very important to note, that these are the modes of intervention through which the different public bodies are actually intervening in the market in order to bring the production and provision to the level of which one can call as social optimum. which is a domain of welfare economics. Now, why? I mean, there is a need to intervene. I mean, this is very important to learn, which means market mechanism is not perfect. It doesn't do the what you call total good which the society requires. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that the market doesn't do good. Only the point is what level the society requires and what level the market is able to satisfy, or what level a particular good market is able to produce. So it may not provide public good to the extent we desire, and public good means defense, street lights and so on, and there may be reasons because it is not easy to price them on a uniform basis, and this is one reason, and I shall be a little later explain what are the characteristics of public goods. But at the moment you can note that defense and police, law and order and street lights, they are known as say public goods. Of course at different levels, one is the national, the other is say subnational level, and the third one is of course at local level. Now market mechanism may also fail in taking account of externalities. Now I will again explain what the externalities are. At the moment, if what I do for a particular consumer does affect a third party, which is neither the buyer nor the seller, then there is externality. Maybe the third party sometimes enjoys and sometimes suffers. So that is the case of externality. Now there are certain entities, we call them natural monopolies as against artificial monopolies. So if market fails inefficiently dealing with the cases of natural monopoly, which means either they are not properly pricing or they are not able to properly price, and they may not be producing enough of the services which natural monopolies are supposed to, then there is a reason for public bodies or the government to intervene. And also when you might have noticed that these days people are talking of intellectual property rights. Earlier we had known the physical property, then people have seen financial property, and of course for long we have been having intellectual property rights, but now we are talking more about the intellectual property. So this sometimes we create monopolies in the form of intellectual property rights, but with a view that this will further promote research and development, and whereby the productivity level will increase, and therefore there is a concept of dynamic efficiency which the public bodies can try to ensure, and which is, unless there is a government body, when IPR cannot be created. So this is very important point which you should note. And then there is something like among different sectors, market is allocating resource in a certain way. Maybe we are producing more in sector A than in sector B, and we ought to produce perhaps more in sector B than in sector A. Then we have to reallocate the resources between these two sectors. The same may happen with respect to reasons. There may be good reasons for us to think that we ought to invest more in the northeast, or say in Bihar, or in a particular other particular area where the market forces will not be bringing enough resources. So there is a reason for the state or the government, or largely we call them because they represent the public. So there is a reason that they intervene and reallocate the resources. And at the same time, there may be people who also believe that the poor are having a very bad lot, and there is a reason for resources to flow from the rich to poor, which means among different sections the market may not be distributing as efficiently as the society would love, and the same may be the case between two generations. We may not be saving enough for the next generation, or it is just possible that we are caring too much for the next generation, and meaning thereby what the society thinks is proper, something has to be brought through the government intervention. As I said that I shall be speaking about the public goods, and I gave some illustrations: defense, police and street light. Defense at the national level, it is a public good, it has to be provided to the nation, and likewise police, which is of course in according to our constitution a state subject, and the street light falls within the domain of say local bodies. But what are the chief characteristics of public goods? One is non-rivalry. I mean, if there is a lamp post, if I enjoy that light, you can easily enjoy it, there is no rivalry. But if I am drinking a cup of tea, you cannot have the same sip, and there is rivalry. So the one of the chief characteristics of public good is that it is non-rival in consumption. But the other is non-excludability. It is not very easy to exclude you for consuming it. If you say, if you are not willing to suppose pay taxes, and still I am not in a position to debar you from consuming, then it is a case of non-excludability. But very often it is suggested that it is a technical matter. In many cases you will find it is not so technical also. It is very, very difficult, and once cost of exclusion is very high, it can be taken as a non-excludability, a case of non-excludability. People often say that there is a case of free ridership, which means I can easily say that I don't want to consume this public good, and then I may not be paying, and then I am actually enjoying for free. But there can be a case of forced ridership also. I mean, I don't want certain things, but you are forcing me to enjoy it. I mean, suppose I am blind and I have to pay for street light, and naturally I am a forced rider, I am not a free rider. But this point is often not discussed in the literature. Now, public goods are often funded from the public exchequer. This is very important part. There is no private funding as such. Maybe at the back somewhere there may be possibility of private funding. Suppose war is being financed by private parties, but the ownership is actually the public one or the government one. Now, the important point which I would like to highlight is, when you purchase a private good as against public good, normally you find that the market, the price is the same, but different persons are purchasing different say amount. But here consumption is common, which means everybody is enjoying the same level of defense, everybody is enjoying the same level of street lighting, and everybody is enjoying the same protection from the police. But depending upon their taxing capacity, they are paying different prices. So, and some of them may not be paying at all, and some of them may be even getting subsidized. So, meaning thereby, in the case of public goods, the consumption is the same, the prices are different. In the case of private good, the price is the same, but the consumptions are different. And then one can also think that there is a continuum, because there cannot be a pure public good and there cannot be a pure private good, or rather there may be, but lot many cases are where we have some continuum between the private and the what you call public characteristics. Now, do we have public bats also? Yes, we have public bats. Pollution is a public bat. It might have arisen from private consumption, but it is a public bat. And likewise, nuisance. Maybe sometimes even crime may be termed as a public bad. So there are many things which we feel bad and they affect all of us, and then they can be taken as public because we are all consuming them, and they are not good because we are being forced, we are not liking them. Now, what is the reach? I mean, there may be global public good, peace is global public good, a world war is global bad, and there may be national public good like defense, there may be sub-national public good. In our country, the example is police, and then there may be street light, which is local. Now, if one talks of health and education, often they are to some extent or to a great extent public, but they also have private benefits, and therefore sometimes we have to deal with what we call externalities. So people often say that if I am educated, perhaps I shall be driving in a better way, and thereby I shall be causing less harm or less accidents on the road, and thereby we are saving the other people. Externalities are often supposed to be positive and negative. Positive means if I am enjoying, I mean, it is just possible that I am enjoying somebody else's private part. So that is an externality which the producer of that good, which is someone else, has passed on to us. There may be negative externalities. A factory may be producing a lot of smoke, and I am not consumer of that good which is producing the smoke, then I am suffering from that smoke. Likewise, there may be a pond which might have been dirtied by a private say producer, for which there may be somebody else as consumer, but there may be a lot many mosquitoes, and I may be suffering, and I may be rather paying for the alleviation of the problems which are caused by the parties of which I am not, I am nowhere, I am neither on the consumption side nor on the production side. So this is the third party argument. Such cases may often cause overproduction or underproduction, and they have to be corrected. So sometimes there may be say law, or there may be suppose Bharat 3. I mean, this is a simple case of reducing the externalities, meaning thereby the cost is being raised, and by implication it means maybe we are having a little fewer cars on road, and maybe a lot less fumes and smokes. So there are mechanisms to deal with these externalities. We do not always agree with all the mechanisms, and we also go on questioning that this mechanism is more efficient or less efficient, and so on. Now, I had talked of natural monopolies as well. So you might notice that technology may not be permitting or rather the competition, in the sense that if you divide a monopoly into two, the cost will rise, and as a result it is desirable that they are allowed to function as monopolies. They are said to be natural in the sense that IPR is an artificial, or suppose East India Company, it has just fired from the government of Britain, and therefore they ran as monopoly. They are artificial ones. The technology generated monopolies are the natural ones in that sense. So this is an important reason. Now I would like to draw your attention to one particular point, which is about the allocation and distribution, which I had earlier considered. Say global cross subsidization. Actually what the government does, that it takes from one part of the economy and it gives to the other part. Now that may be across sector, maybe from agriculture or a particular crop to a particular manufacturing or say service, maybe education. We are taxing industrial goods and subsidizing education. The same may be across sections. I mean, maybe one section is paying the tax and the other is being provided the food subsidy. The same may be case across regions and maybe across generations, as I earlier discussed. So, but there can be a local cross subsidization when you are having, for example, electricity board. Now it may be providing the same electricity to commercial venture, to industrial venture, to residences, and so on. But often it happens that the rates are different, which means there is some kind of local cross subsidization. And the same may be the case, the first AC maybe the fare is charged a little or rather much higher than it deserves than the sleeper. If there was total say market mechanism. But we often ask say many of such ventures to cross subsidize, and there may be a good many other illustrations likewise. Now public utilities, as I said, that they are normally having a special network like electricity, water and telephones, and competition is not very easy except at the award level, that there are many firms which are say bidding for an award, but once when it is awarded, then there is little likelihood of competition. So in that case it has to be decided whether it has to be in public domain or in a private domain, and in either case there has to be a regulation. Now finally there is a issue of public choice, and this is about how do individuals' preferences get translated into public choice. Lot of us may be leftist, some of us may be rightist, and then there may be some middle course. So we have to see that actually how we are finally making the choice. Maybe some voting mechanism is there. So this area, which is a little new area, is about the public government intervention. How is it is done, whether directly or indirectly, whether it is through a state apparatus, which means the departments, the ministries are doing, or it is through the parastatals like boards, authorities, corporations and so on. And then you can discuss two basic forms. There is despotic and democratic. That means there is a I am deciding on behalf of everybody, and the other is that everybody is participating in the decision making. So there may be direct elections, there may be indirect elections, there may be rules on winning, and there may be unanimity rule, and there may be consensus, which means there can be even veto, that some person or some body is given a right to veto the decision. Normally we go for simple majority, which means the people who are voting, they should be more than the say 50% if there are only two issues or two candidates, and there can be a good variety of voting mechanism. There may be point mechanism, points or ranks or so on. So finally there are certain other areas which we may not have time to discuss and deal in great detail, but then there is something like strategic voting, which means I am voting in a way that I secure my objective, meaning thereby I shall be having some tie with somebody, that you vote for my issue and I vote for your issue, is something which is known as log rolling. From the Western democracy we find that it is often through the parties, and within this public choice also there is something like a discussion on bureaucracy, what kind of bureaucracy we should have. But we have discussed that how markets fail, but one can also talk of whether the governments fail, and if they are failing, what can be done. And they also fail, and they can fail, and they do fail. I thank you very much. I think you had a very broad say survey of the area of public choice, and I did not plan to discuss anything in detail, because this is a kind of introduction encompassing the whole gamut of public economics.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.